This weekend has been about the image of God, which we are. We're that image. We are Genesis 1:26. That should be a verse that we memorize. And God said, "Let us make man as our image and likeness." And we could just say, and it was so, and it is so. So if we wanted to know what we look like, not just a physical outer appearance, that's what we generally are taught to gauge image and likeness, but the content of our being, you know, the whole of who we are, that's the thing that we want to look at for the image. And so when you put the astrological wheel up and you begin to realize it's from that we come forth from that very energy, that power, the power of the wheels. And that's what the Elohim is called. So I wanted to read you this note again this morning that I wrote this a few days ago or a week or so ago. It was where I was looking at the column of threes. And before I even do that, let me go ahead and put the column of threes up here. Let's see. Okay, that's the three. In Hebrew, this is called the three mothers. The three mothers. Those are the three letters that builds everything. It comes back again to that column. If you remember when we did the light, life, and love, and then we put man underneath it with the 7 circles, which is actually called the Kabbalistic tree of life. So, and you can take that image or that building, and you can find this. Masonry's built on this, the Rosicrucians built on this, the Golden Dawn. Those are all names that some people aren't familiar with, some may be familiar with, but it all comes, everything stems from this. The Father, the Mother, the Child, the Holy Trinity, light, life, and love, you know, etc. Light, life, this is it right here. This is the three. And in this tree, or in this picture, you have 3 columns, just as we talked about yesterday. You have the center column, the middle way, and then you have the left and the right column. And so when you look at Genesis chapter 1, Genesis chapter 1 is like where an architect sat down and began to make an architectural drawing. He began to give a blueprint or a pattern of what he was about to do. So Genesis chapter 1, when it talks about the different facets of this creation that God is Elohim, the powers, the astrological wheel, is in motion to create. Genesis chapter 1 is that architectural drawing up until Genesis 2:4. Then the drawing is complete, and that drawing deals with these 7. So this astrological wheel, or light, life, and love, are the powers of the 3, creates the 7. And that's what's called the 7 yoms. In Hebrew, it's yom, it means facets of life, or abundant life, or the extension of life. And that word yom was translated for the word day. And so we were taught to look at it literally, which was the great error of Christianity. Should never have been taught or even thought to look at it literally. It wasn't meant to be literal. It was meant to be a mythological story or an architectural print or a drawing about the human anatomy, which is the temple of God, who we are. So all ancient materials tie into this concept and this idea. But this concept and idea is foreign to most Christians. They've never been taught to think like that. So when you get into Genesis chapter 2 and verse 4, you complete the 7 yoms, because the 7th yom is the place of peace and freedom. It's called Shabbat. And we thought it was the Sabbath day of the week, or we call it Sunday, or if you're Orthodox, you call it Saturday. You know, if you're like the Seventh-day Adventist or any Adventist group. They call it. And so they're always trying to focus in on a specific day and honor the day. When you look at the New Testament, very clearly Paul says there's no such thing as a special day above another day, for every day is special. Every day is a holy day. But again, because we were taught to see things literal instead of seeing the things for what they truly are, then we have lost so much of the treasure and the wisdom that's ours. And not only is it ours, we actually retain it in our being. And it's sort of like it's dormant there, and it's being awakened. And that's what this is about, this weekend's about, or any gathering. Every time we come together, it doesn't matter, 2 or 3 of us, we're just talking about this. It's about awakening that that's within us, or stirring it up, or arousing that. And that's the power of the essence of the divine, which is us. And that's difficult for us to see that and think that. So as I read this, and I know these terminologies are sometimes foreign to people. I mean, they are to me, or they were to me. And, you know, the more I read, or the more I looked at, you know, just a wide spectrum of material, then these terms got more and more familiar with me. So they weren't totally, I wasn't totally ignorant to them. And many times we are, you know, sometimes the only reason that we're ignorant is just because we haven't had that exposed to us, or we haven't heard that. You know, if you haven't been taught something, it's hard to necessarily know it, even though you may have it deposited in you. And then when you're taught it, it kind of stirs it up, and you awaken to it. Oh, I know that. You've had that happen, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
It's just something about it. I just somehow or another, I intuitively know it. And that's it. You're exactly right. Because that's where it's at. It's in your intuitive nature. It's in your instinctual nature. It's in the core or the heart of your being. And that's where the essence is at. That's where the power is at. You could say that's where God is at. Okay? So when I read this just let it kind of bounce around with you. Think about it. Chew on it. You know, do what you can with it. But in the ancient philosophy, the term nada, means tube, pipe, nerve, blood vessel. These are channels through which energies flow through the physical body, the subtle body, and the casual body. And here's the 3 bodies. So you see this a lot. So if we're talking about the Trinity, you're going to have to associate the Trinity with you. So again, when I'm talking about this 7, it's the same as this. It's the same as my stick man. So the 7 golden candlesticks, anywhere that you see the 7, it's always referring to the temple or the tabernacle of God, which is the physical body. This 7 and this 7 in the Kabbalistic tree are the same thing. If you put the head up here, which is God, and you put your arms here and your legs here, you see the same thing, okay? It just lays it out differently. You know, and I can do the rainbow, it doesn't matter, any place you want to find, or you do find the 7. So, and there are 3 aspects of that body, 3 aspects of it. And that's the physical aspect, the subtle aspect, and the causal aspect. In the ancient wisdom, these nadi are points of intensity or energy. I would actually just call them nerves, because they are referring to your nerves. And I also could refer them to your blood vessels, because they run together but not the same. But they do run together. The number of these nadis in the ancient wisdom is said to be up in the millions. And the same thing's true when they talk about your nerves. It's the millions. You know, if you were to take any one of us and grab hold of our brain in our body and jerk our brain out, you wouldn't jerk out something that's just right here. You would jerk out your entire spinal column all the way down your back and all the nerves that go out from it to the tips of your toes. If you pull that out, you pull the entire wiring nervous system of your whole body. But we think of the brain as this. But it's not just this. It's not just this thing up here and housed in the skull. It's down into the spinal column and all out through the whole body. And so when the ancients were referring to the nadi, these nerves, these vessels, they were referring to the energy and its intricacy. The number of these in their ancient wisdom is in the millions. They are divided into the important nadi. So they break it down into these right here. These are the important ones. And when I started this particular ideology 20-something years ago, 25 years ago, I started this out of looking in a medical dictionary, Gray's Anatomy, and I was reading about the chakras, and I was reading about the endocrine glands. And of course, I call them endocrine glands. And my daughter, she's a nurse, so she said, "Daddy, that is not how you say it." I said, "That's how I say it." So I said, "It's spelt that way. It should be said that way." She said, "Well, it's not said that way." So she corrected me. She said, "You call them endocrine." So the endocrine glands. And so I saw that. I thought, oh, the 7 major glands. And then if you look at that baby, when that egg and that seed are united together, you see that almost within just a few hours, you see this little 7 worm. I mean, it's so small, it's so intricate. I mean, it comes from this brain and the spinal column. It begins that whole, because the information is there. That is the soul. Because the soul is the information of the divine to build the body and to function in the body and to empower the body by the spirit that's with it. You know, and so I know that's different for us to think like that, but if we tried to think that way a little bit, you'd find it smokes real good and serve you real well too. So these are divided into 3 important nadis: the Ada, the Pingala, and the Sushuma. And so if I were separating them, I would separate these right here. I would call this the Sushuma, the center way. Jesus said that this is the narrow way. And Jesus said in that same teaching on the Mount on the Sermon, the Sermon on the Mount on the Sermon, same thing. Jesus said in that same thing, he said, if your eye is single, then you'll find this narrow path. He called it the straight and narrow path. That's one way to say it. In Eastern philosophy, you can call it the middle way. It's the way of balance. It's the way where that you pull the left and the right, the male, the female, the extremes together and become balanced. Otherwise, we get unequal. We get out of balance, right? And that's what happens. So that's what this is about, finding that Sushuma, that center way, the straight path, the narrow path. You know, we were told if you walk in the narrow path, you're not doing this and you're not doing that. And that means that you're in the narrow path, because it's going to be awful hard and difficult to go through that narrow path. And that's just not true. Those are things that we've been told in religion to try to make us do things. You got to do this, you got to do that. You can't do this, you can't do that. You got so much can'ts and don'ts. You know, it's ridiculous. Yeah, okay. And this is also referred to, the Sushuma is also where they get the whole idea of the 7 chakras. And again, it's what I call it, the 7 endocrine glands. I can also call it the 7 churches. It's the same thing. So actually in the book of Revelation, if you look at the book of Revelation, you'll see the 7 is the most predominant number there. It's predominant with everything. I mean, because it's about the 7 eyes of God, the 7 spirits of God. That's all that. You're the 7 eyes, you're the 7 spirits. All of that's referring, you're the 7 churches. It's all referring to the same thing. So, then you go and you can read the Upanishad. The nadis penetrate the body from the soles of the feet to the crown of the head, and in them, the prana, which is the breath, you can call it the ruach, the spirit, because see, it's says the same thing but with a different language or different terminology. The prana, or the breath, and in the life abides the atma, which is the abode of the shakti, or the creative, animating, or the inanimate worlds. That would be the same thing as saying that God lives inside you, the causal one, that is empowering to cause the effects. And we can look, all we get to look at is the effects. We think, oh, well, this is the results. These exact ancient wisdom, or this exact ancient wisdom, is recorded by the method of types and allegories, myths, numerology, astrology, stories, characters, names, mountains, etc. Cities, all these things. All of them were mythological, all referring to certain things. And I'll show you that here in just a few minutes on some of the typology of the name. And I hope that you'll see something greater into the story, the telling of the story, and look at it rather than just literal people doing certain things and realize it's something that's inside you or something happening within you. The Torah, which are the first 5 books of the Bible, in the Torah, this same story of the 3 Eastern terminologies, the Ida, the Pingala, and the Shushama, are used to call Esh and Esha. And I wanted to look at that this morning. I just want to show you that in your Bible, or let you see it in the Bible, because Esh and Esha is not a term familiar to people. Esh is a number that, the root of that word means fire. And all of you remember when Moses in Exodus chapter 3, the fire is burning. You remember that? The bush is burning. That word fire, the bush burning, that word burning or fire is ash. It just simply meant it was the male energy that consumes everything but don't destroy it. Now that makes sense, don't it?
Yes.
It never made any sense to you when all you saw this bush was burning, it was on fire, and you thought, well, why in the hell don't the leaves burn up on it? Because you know, common thinking, literally, the leaves ought to burn up. The limbs ought to burn up on it. If it's going to be on fire, see, we didn't see it because the fire was the essence, the energy of God that encompasses your being. You're on fire with that. And the more we see that, we realize that is the energy that we're talking about. That's the energy pulsating through all those millions and millions of nerves and vessels that's in your body. And the more we know that, the more we begin to realize, the more that we allow that to light us. So in the Hebrew Bible, the Torah, these terms are used in Hebrew. Whereas in Sanskrit or in Eastern terminology, they're used in Eastern terminology. Same thing. Say the same thing. Same as this Esh and Esha are the same thing as the Ida and the Pingala. And we get to understand these. We realize that is the right and left hemisphere of my brain, the right and left sides of my body, my right arm, right leg, etc., etc. And when I bring all of that over here into this place in the astrological wheel, I'm just going to put here, I'm only going to do these right here. I'm just going to do the 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the reason I do that is because if I do my little man, right here is where his pelvic bone is at. And my goodness, it's so important that we would understand the pelvic that we don't. This is the scales of justice. The scales of justice are right here between your gonads. And your gonads are important as your brain. That's why that many times they refer to it. It's slang language, and I realize it's slang, but I don't mean it to be ugly or I don't mean it to be vulgar. But many times we say men think with the wrong head. Terminology is correct. That is correct because there's a head down here in the gonads, and women have it just exactly like men have it. There's not any different there. When you break the anatomy down, that's why I really kid about watching that little guy Cullen, because he's so profound of explaining what's up here and what's down here, what's in the gonads and what's in the head, as above the belt, so below the belt. You just have to watch it and see it. Hopefully it will open your eyes. We can get out of vulgarity or get out of the vulgar thinking, but we begin to realize we do have a head on both ends of our body, and there's nothing wrong with either one of them. We just have to learn to use them for the use of their design. Okay. Right? Y'all get y'all okay with that, maybe? Entertain you a little bit, think about it. Yeah. All right. So let me move on here. I wanted to read several of the notes of the things that I had written before I get into a couple of these things in Genesis. because for me, I am taught by repetition. That's how I learn. I go over and over and over. And sometimes I think, man, I know there's something there and I can't seem to get it out. And so I go over and over and over until finally I can extract it. The three mothers are the building blocks of the Hebrew alphabet. That's the aleph. That's the first. This is the first letter. It has that one value. This is the mem. And I can't remember where the mem falls, whether it's around the 12th or 13th letter. I'm not really sure, but it's somewhere around the middle of the alphabet. And this is the sheen. It's a 300 value. It is next to the last blip in the Hebrew alphabet. But these are called the three mothers. And then this right here, so you have three mothers, and then you have what's called 12 elementals. You have 12 elementals, which are the 12 wheels of the astrological, and then you have the 7. And so when you have 3, 12, and 7, you have 22. And that's how many glyphs or letters are in the Hebrew alphabet. And they're broken down and they're divided into those different categories. And when you start to see them, so anywhere you have these 12 elemental letters or numbers used in the Hebrew alphabet to make a word, you're referring to the astrological wheel. And you won't find a page in your Bible anywhere that don't have 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 of these 12 elementals or letters or glyphs on that page. And that's why I said you can find astrology on every page of the Bible. It's just there. But we've been taught to stay away from it. It's taboo. We think it's of the devil and all of these other things that we've been taught. You know, remember last night, I'm going to put it on the board, but I want you to think about with me last night, we talked about those three minds. And I used those three different words that were used for mind, mind, mind. And we found that first word that's used for mind in Genesis chapter 23, verse 8, is actually the word for soul. It's the Hebrew word nafesh. Then we found in Genesis 26, 35, this is the second place the word mind is used, and it's actually the word ruach. It's the word for spirit. And then the third place we found that word used was in Leviticus, and it's the word thay, which actually means speech. And then there is actually another word that's used for mind, but it is also, it's the word that I put on the very top of the board when I use the beth and the lamid, and it's called the heart. So is your heart your mind? Yes. Is your soul your mind? Yes. Is your spirit your mind? Yes. Is your speech your mind? Yes, absolutely. That's all your mind. Your mind is not your brain. Even though it uses, and it's connected to your brain as much as it's connected to your heart that pumps blood. As much as it's connected to your bladder and your kidneys. Or any of the 7 endocrine glands. It's connected to your pineal gland, your pituitary gland, your adrenal gland. All of those are mind. And so when we begin to realize that and we start to own that, we won't try to put the mind in the brain and keep it there, but we will begin to realize the mind is a very, very powerful tool or ability that we have. And we have that mind to use. And therefore, as God thinks, so can we, and so should we. The thoughts of God should be the thoughts of man, and could be and can be, and in most cases are supposed to be. So if you will go with me to a passage over, I think it's in the book of Exodus, and I want you to see something with me. Exodus. Okay, Exodus, I want you to look at two different chapters. Exodus chapter 25. And this is where Moses has been instructed to build a tabernacle. We call it the tabernacle in the wilderness. We've all been taught that. And we've all been exposed to some phenomenal teachings on the tabernacle in the wilderness, because it's just been a theme in different circles for years and years, and there's some phenomenal teachings about the tabernacle. And many of those teachings got into literalness of the tabernacle, and when they do that, they get away from the true meaning of the tabernacle. But when we start to see the tabernacle, that it is actually a superstructure of the physical body, it begins to open the tabernacle in a whole different light. So which I'll show you, or I'll point out just a few things about it. But, you know, just that alone, good gracious, we could spend years and years, you know, as a deceased friend of all of ours, Rudy Jones. I guess he spent most of his life in the tabernacle, didn't he? And you can get his material and you can extract. Now, I think the further Rudy got into it, the more he began to equate it with the body. At least my understanding of some of his last work done was seeing it in a different light or a deeper light. It's like Kirby said, layer. So, yeah, getting into the deeper. Anyway, Exodus chapter 25, and look with me at verse 8. So it says, King James says, let them make me a sanctuary. When actually in Hebrew it doesn't say that, let them make me something. Actually it says this, in Hebrew it actually says, and I will make of them a sanctuary. Completely different. I will make of them a sanctuary. Well, what does that mean? It's a place he's going to live. Because we call it sanctuary, we put something holy on it, but if we look at it, oh, it's the temple. Oh, it's the house. It's the dwelling place. Oh, it's the residence. Because that's what the word means. Residence. So it's a huge difference when you start to see from the perspective of code rather than perspective of translations on top of translations. And on that, when you've got translations on top of translation, copyists on top of copyists, you have to remember all of this was done by hand. It wasn't done where they had one and then they put it in the copy machine and they made another one just like it. No, you sit down and you write a letter of 10 pages yourself and then sit down and copy it yourself one time, and I will guarantee you your second copy will not be the same as your first. You will just make mistakes. Now, you want me to, you can take your time, do all you want to, but you will do it. And if you think that these things were not twisted or mistaken, they were. But when you get to the code's not hard, really. You can just see a whole line of these glyphs and you go, wow, what can you make out of it? Well, these are some of the things that you can make out of it. So he will say, I will make of them a sanctuary. I'm going to make them my home. And he said, and I will show you, verse 9, he said, I will show you the pattern. I will show you the pattern. I'm going to show you the pattern of the tabernacle. See that? Everybody see that? Tabernacle? The pattern of all the instruments thereof. The tabernacle is the house, it's the building, it's the physical body. It's right here. This is the tabernacle. This is it. The 7 yoms. This is the house. The physical body. Well, what's in the physical body? Look what he says. I'm going to put all kinds of instruments in that thing. Wow, when we get into the intricacies of that, that's why I said what I said about the book of Leviticus. The book of Leviticus is about the intricacies of it. And those things that are so intricate in them you start out with the 7 glands, which are the 7 chakras, which are the major center points of energy. And all, you know, I forget, someone here this weekend had done some acupuncture. Who was that? Sally, yeah, Sally, and she was just elated. She was just blown away of how well it was. And the thing about it was, a medical doctor was doing it to her. And I thought, wow, that's encouraging. And the doctor says, we're going to see how this will work for you. And if it don't, then we won't. And I don't know. That must be a new breed of doctors that we got coming. I hope. It sounds good anyway. Amen. But you go over to the eastern, China and Japan, you go over to the eastern side of the world, and they've been using this for thousands of years. Acupuncture. Why? Because they know these energy points in your physical body. Have any of y'all ever had acupuncture done? I have. Great. Look here. Yeah. But we don't practice it. We don't. Many times we go do it because somebody said you ought to go do it, but we don't have any stock in it or any belief in it. So many times we say, I didn't get nothing out of it. They just punched me with these sticks. Yep. It's just like, people taking a certain supplement. Well, I took them things for 30 days. They didn't do me any good. I couldn't feel a bit of difference. That's your problem. Take them for 6 months. Give it time to work your body. Don't just think, well, I just took a drink of it and I didn't like it. It didn't do me any good. So, why is that? We in America, we're looking for instant gratitude. We need it now, bless God. I got to have it right now. If it didn't jerk me or twinkle me or tickle me or, if I didn't see stars, then it ain't no good. That's our problem. So he said, I'm going to show you how to make this thing. I'm going to show you the tabernacle. The tabernacle is the same thing as a tabernacle. I'm going to show you the tabernacle. I'm going to give you the pattern of all the instruments of it. Verse 10. And I'm going to show you, I will make an ark of shittim wood. So he's making a tabernacle, he's making an ark. Okay? Look over at chapter 31. Well, while I'm right here at chapter 31, we will extract some beautiful stuff from chapter 30. Well, let me just take a little side journey here. Let me read you something here in chapter 30, verse 22. And if you have a pencil, you might want to make a note of this. You'll see something here. It says, Moreover, the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Take also unto you principal spices. Now, I heard a lady who was one of my mentors, 30-something years ago, Dr. Fuchsia Pickett. I heard her teach on this in a different fashion, more, not necessarily traditional, because she wasn't traditional so much, but more in types and shadows. And it just totally blew my mind, and it really just excited me of some of the things. And this is actually the anointing oil for the high priest and the different oils that they extracted to make this. So look what this said. Thou shalt, verse 23, thou shalt also take unto thee principal spices, pure myrrh, 500 shekels, of sweet cinnamon, half so much, even 250 shekels, and sweet calamus. You see that word calamus? That's the word cannabis. That's marijuana. Right. So this is the part of the anointing oil of the high priest. You are the high priest, in case you don't know it. Go to the book of Revelations, and it'll tell you that very clearly. It says, I have made unto you priests and kings. Why? Priests to rule the realm of the spirit, which you are, and kings to rule the realm of your natural world, which you are. These are things that you are. You may not exercise your authority in these places, but you are these and you have this. And I think many times we don't do it because we aren't taught how. We don't know how, so we don't extract that. So sweet calamus, which is cannabis, or actually marijuana, 250 shekels. And cassia, 500 shekels, after the shekel of the sanctuary, and of olive oil a hin. And thou shalt make it an oil of holy anointment, an ointment compound after the art of the apothecary. It shall be a holy anointing oil. And thou shalt anoint, look what you're going to anoint. What? The tabernacle. That's you. That's yourself. You're going to anoint the tabernacle, and you're going to anoint the ark of the tabernacle. Now, we always know what the ark of it is, right? It's in the Holy of Holies. It's that inner place. Well, here is your ark. It's right here in the very top of your head. You can call it your brain if you'd like. That's what you've got to anoint. And I'm telling you right now, they're seeing a lot of good medical benefits of marijuana and the brain and what it can do, especially the oils of it. Do you think possibly God knew that years ago and put it here in a book and we're too dumb to see it? It's been here all the time. They were doing it. They were practicing it. I mean, we were talking about one of the presidents we had. One of our first presidents grew it in his backyard or in his field. Hallelujah. Maybe we are waking up and coming full circle, right? I hope we are. Now, go with me to chapter 31. That's really where I wanted to come to, because I want you to see this. I want you to pay attention to this, because the construction of this thing is phenomenal. Again, it is God's home. It's God's house, which we are. Genesis 1 is the introduction to it. It's the architectural blueprint of it. Genesis chapter 2 is actually the incubation of it in the womb or in the garden, because the womb of mom is the garden. And you can see that very clearly. Genesis chapter 4 is where that child is delivered from the garden, again with three aspects: Cain, Abel, and Seth. Exactly. That's exactly why you have those three, well, they're called sons. And when you look at son, actually in Hebrew, the word in Hebrew for son is not referring to a male in species. It's actually referring to the relationship or the house or the place of God. That's exactly why you have a Cain and Abel and Seth. And the only reason is because it's saying that one of them needs to be slain. It's referring to the carnal mind, or the mind of that's continually about the physical body. It has to be surrendered to the higher mind. It doesn't mean that it needs to die and cease to be, because it's designed to be in connection to the physical world. It's designed to tell you when it's cold outside to put a jacket on. I mean, it's designed to show us these things. So it's a matter of owning it, right? Instead of it owning me having the authority of it over it. So here we go, verse 1, chapter 31. It says, "The Lord spake unto Moses, saying, See, I have called by name." Now watch these. Now unless you really do some study or you want to look, and I encourage all of you to do this because you'll find it to be a very phenomenal study. "I have called by name Bezaleel." Bezaleel. Now, isn't that a weird name? Bezaleel. Now listen to what his name means. His name means, and you can hear this in his name, Bezalel. You remember I told you that this zodiacal wheel is the Elohim. Elohim. Ohim is plural of El. And the word El is power. Power, not force, power. And the energy behind power is love. The energy behind force is carnality, sarx, flesh. That's exactly why we call our military armed forces. Why? Because they force their energy. God don't. God don't have to. Power doesn't have to do that. Power doesn't do that. Power doesn't ever force you to do anything. Do you think it can't? You think God couldn't make you? Could. And you know what we usually try to do? Oh God, just please make me. Make me do it. You know, we want God to do something that ain't already done to us or for us. Mm-hmm. We want God to exercise force. God don't do that. God doesn't exercise force. So there's a tremendous difference. So look at the guy's name right here. You can see this. You see that L on the end of it? This guy's name has to do with power. And so that's what his name is, Baziel. And actually the word means the shadow or image. That's what we're talking about all week long. Image. That's what this name means. It's the image of power. And when you look at yourself and you break yourself down with your birth charts and seeing those places, both the place where your father put his seed into your mother and initiated the building of the house of you, and when your mother, through travail, pushed you out of the garden and God breathed into his house and empowered his house to be. When we start to see that, the more we start to see that, the more you begin to realize the miracle of yourself. So this guy's name, Bezalel, his name means the shadow or the image of God. It actually means in the likeness or in the image of God, or the image of the El. So when I do my birth chart, February the 19th, May the 20th, 21st, and then across August the 21st, which is my opposite, my balance. When I do that, I begin to realize who I am. I begin to know myself better. I know my weaknesses and I know my strengths. I know what I can do. I know what I can't do. And the more I know myself, the more I can work with myself. You know, and that's the key. That is what the ancients taught, the aphorisms above the door of the temple in Daphne. Know thyself. And here's a phrase that many people leave out because underneath it says, know thyself and you will know the gods. That's what the real saying says. If you know yourself, you'll know the gods. Why? Because the more I know me, the more I know that created me. And that is me. So Baziel. And you notice he says, I've called this one. And I'm going to tell you, you are Baziel. You are the one that's the likeness of God. You are the one that's in the image of that power. You are. I am. So I am Baziel. And notice where it says, I have called by name Baziel, and he is the son of what? Uri. He is the son of Uri. Well, when you look at this word Uri, let me put this on the board for you and spell his name, Uri. I'm just going to put it right here on the bottom. Aleph, Wav, Rash. That's the name Uri. Aleph, Wav, Rash, Yod. Let's do 10. This glip has a 1 value, this glip has a 6 value, this glip has a 200 value, and this glip has a 10 value. So the Yod, this is masculine, feminine. This is Rash. This is fire. That's where the fire. This is male energy, and this is God. So when you see these glyphs, Uri, that's his name. Now look at this glyph right here. The only difference in this glyph, Aleph, Wav, Rash, is it don't have a Yod on it. It doesn't have the masculine, feminine addition to it. This glyph right here is the word light. God is light. That's called Ur, or in Genesis chapter 1. God is light. And you look at this guy. So where did this Baziel, this power, come from? It says he was the son of Uri. He's the son of light. Can't you see that's who you are? When you take the seed and the egg and you break them down and they begin to look at them, they said they are actually photons. They're light particles. That's where you come from. You cannot not be this. We try our best not to be it, but we still are these very things. Mm-hmm. You're the light, manifested in a dense world called material or matter. But nevertheless, you still are. You know, it's just like the light's covered over. It's shadowed. It's shaded. It's imaged. That's what shadow and likeness is. It's just imaged. But wow, when you get to the true thing, you know, you get to realize the shadow on the wall of the cave is cast by the fire of the light shining on the character. And you can be afraid of the shadow. That's what we are so many times. We're afraid of the shadow of ourselves rather than to realize the power of myself. And notice that's what he says. He says he's the son of Uri, who is the son of Hur. And this word Hur, now I want to put this word on the board too. Hur, but actually in Hebrew it's called Kor. Kor. Because it starts out with the Hebrew Kaf. That Kaf, that's number 8. The Kaf or Che'at or Ke'at or Kaf. It has the Vav and it has the Rash. If you'll notice, the Vav and the Rash, the Vav and the Rash, the Vav and the Rash. But this one has that. And really what this name means, and I'm going to work on this one here in just a little bit. I'm just going to leave it right there, just like that. And we'll come back to it in just a few minutes. Go ahead and put the values here, 6 and 200. And it is amazing to do it, and I'm just not doing it this morning, to take these numbers and always reduce them to their lowest common denominator. And by that, you get to see a picture of what that word is meaning and what that word is saying. So let me read it on here. It says, verse 2 again, "See, I have called thy name Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. And I have filled him with the spirit of Ruach, the breath of God." That really speaks to me, because I realize that's talking about me. That's talking to me. She's talking to every one of us. I have filled him. I filled you. Period. Don't put your name in there. I filled you with the Spirit of the living God, and I filled you with wisdom. Look here. This is wisdom. Don't you know that God is wisdom? W-I-S-D-O-M. I filled you with knowledge. And I filled you with understanding. Knowledge is feminine, knowledge is masculine, understanding is feminine. This is God dancing with you. The left and right hemispheres of your brain. This is Ash. I'll get to that in just a minute. Ash, and this is Asha. And I can do the same thing over here just by taking the brain of my little stick man and divided it into sections, and I call this Ash and call this Asha, because it's the same thing. Okay? So I filled him with wisdom and understanding and knowledge in all manner of workmanship, to devise cunning works, to work in gold and silver and brass, in cutting stones, to set them in carvings in the timber, to work in all manner of workmanship. Now behold, it goes on and on and on. Okay, now go with me to Genesis chapter 2. And I'm going to try to just close or tie this together on this chapter 2, because this is a place where there's a lot of confusion. Just like almost everywhere, there's a lot of confusion in what it says. Now remember, it says in Genesis 1:26, we've been using it, Genesis 1:26, we can all quote it. I will make him, I will create him, I will build him in my image, as my image, and as my likeness. And that's exactly what it says. Then in chapter 3, we come to this place, and we get way off the pattern. It says, now the serpent, Nachesh, that's what that word is in Hebrew. It's the word Nachesh, serpent. And if you can, hold your place right here, because I just want to quickly give you just turn over to Genesis chapter 30, and we'll come right back. Just turn over to Genesis chapter 30. And you hear that word Nachesh. Nachesh. Kind of have to do it with your the roof of your mouth and the back of your throat, the guttural, to do that. Y'all can do it. It's like clearing your throat. Nachesh. Now, that's the word translated for serpent. Now, the word for serpent or for snake, the word for snake is sa'ir. Now, you hear the difference? So, this in Genesis 3, it ain't no snake. Now, I know they told you it was a snake because they used the word serpent. But it's not a snake, because the Hebrew word for snake is sa'ir. As a matter of fact, Moses says when you're out there in the wilderness and the sa'ir bite you, the serpent bites you, sa'ir, actually, it means it has a fire in it. That's what the poison was all about. It's a fire. Sa'ir. That's a snake. But this serpent is not a snake. So what in the world is this serpent? Well, this serpent is the same thing as the Shushama. It's the center way. It's the middle way. It's that pulls the left and the right together. It's that pulls good and evil to a center path. And we have been afraid of this serpent. We don't know this serpent. We don't realize this serpent is he's my asset, not my enemy. And we're taught to fight the thing. We're taught to stay away from it. Don't get around it. Don't mess with this serpent. Well, look here at verse 30, Genesis chapter 30, verse 27. It says, and Laban said unto him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in your eyes, tarry. For I have learned by Nachesh. Now I wonder why they didn't put serpent there. Why didn't they go ahead and put serpent there like they did in Genesis 3:1? I have learned by the serpent. Well, what does that word Nachesh mean? Well, it has several meanings. One of the meanings of it is to learn by experience. You can learn things by the experiences that you go through. Do you not? How many of you not? How many of you have ignored the experiences you go through and didn't learn nothing? Yeah, we do. We don't pay attention. But as we start to pay attention, we begin to learn. We can learn and that's what that word means. In other words, this is actually referring to a nerve. It's referring to the sushama, the column. And again, I'm going to say it's the nerve that connects the brain to the whole nervous system in the body. So the Nachesh is that which draws the tree of the knowledge of good and evil together. And we have been taught to be afraid of that. We've been taught to shun the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We stay away from it. That's just one place of the use of this word Nachesh. I can take you to many other places and show you where it's used in different ways. And it's not just used in one particular way. It's used in many different ways. It's not just used to experience or to learn by experience. It's used for other words in different places, but it's the same way. But let's read this. Genesis 3:1. I want to read this and share some things that the Hebrew code says right here, a few verses. Verse 1 says, the serpent, or you could say your middle way or your nervous system, is more subtle. The word subtle means frugal. You were always taught it meant deceitful, right? So when you said subtle, it meant deceitful. It's frugal. It's like my grandma was very frugal. I mean, she extracted out of stuff people would throw away. She would just bring a treasure out of it. And that's exactly what it means to be frugal. So what's frugal about you? You're Nachesh. Your ability to learn by your experiences. That's very frugal if we will pay attention to it. So it's more frugal than the beast. You see the word beast? That's the word che. You remember when it says the tree of life in the midst of the garden? The word life is che. So what is it saying? It's saying that the serpent is more frugal than the life that's in you. And you see, we were looking at this to say the beast is an animal. Or we call it the snake with legs on his back. Knowing full well the snake don't have legs on his back, the snake don't talk. Never has and never will. Still, we have missed the understanding of this story. And it's a profound story because actually all of this is taking place in the womb of your mom as it's building your nervous system. And that's what this is about. The middle part of chapter 2 is about the blood system. And Genesis chapter 3 is about the neural system. So here you have a psychic system and a physical system being built together at the same time in the womb of your mom. So Genesis 2 and 3 are about that creation of the womb, of you in that womb. Okay, so let's move on here. He's more frugal than the life. Beast, they call it beast, but it's the same word, che, life. And he said unto the woman, this woman right here is this right here, Esha. This is the womb of fire. That's what that's called, Esha. In Hebrew, that means the womb of fire. What's happening here is in the womb of fire of your mom, your neuron, your nervous system is being completed. And the intricate work that's in there is a work that only God can do. It's not a work that man can do. Man don't know how to do that. And God said, you shall not eat of the tree of the garden, not eat of every tree that's in the garden. And the woman said, and there's a lot of corruption in the translation. So the way they tell in this story, there's a lot of these words in this story that aren't in this story in the Hebrew code. Just skip with me down to verse 5. It says, and God doth know, of course God knows, that in the day that you eat thereof, your eyes will be opened, and you will be as God. You'll be as God is. You'll know. In the day that your eye opens. Well, you know good and well, in the womb where that child is being built, his eyes are not opened yet. When he's extracted from the womb, his eyes begin to open. But in there, they're not open. They're functional, but they're not open. They're not seeing. But when he's extracted from the womb, this is a preparation. This is a preparation for you to be upright, for you to speak, for you and me to be and to do what we have been called and designed to be and do. Let me read you some things that Carlos Suarez says in this book, The Cipher of Genesis. For me, this has been one of the most phenomenal books I've ever read, and it's been probably as much a difficult book as I've ever read. So, if you're going to read The Cipher of Genesis, roll up your sleeves and get you a Hebrew concordance and go to work. Now, I want you to just hear this. I think he says it in such a beautiful way that I couldn't improve on it at all. He says, we want the psychological security of a protecting deity, whereas we can become as gods, knowing good and evil. Just as the serpent said, this statement, which really means that we can and should become the whole process of Elohim. Think about that. The whole process of Elohim. Well, again, when I'm thinking Elohim, I'm not thinking old gray-headed man. I'm going back to this astrological wheel. I'm going to be the whole process of this. Well, we have been talking this weekend how that we incubate for 9 months. We're shy of the whole cycle. And that's how it was translated in Psalm 64, that you were born and shapen in iniquity. And the word iniquity actually means shy of the cycle. So you haven't been completed in the cycle. You have been built in 9 months of the whole cycle. I mean, that just goes off all over me, all inside me. So he says, this is what it's saying. He said this statement, which really means that we can and should become the whole process, Elohim, and confirmed by Yod-He-Vav-He Elohim. In other words, by the Yod-He are the 4 quarters of the earth of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen, the building materials and gases that make the physical body that the Elohim moves into to sanctuary it, or to residence, or to live in it, to be it. Then he says, the man is now become one of us. Hallelujah. Well, you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say that has not been a material fact yet, because we are still working on the revelation of seeing that. So I don't think we have really stood up in the power that we've been created. Now, I'm not saying that many of the ancients didn't walk in this. To build a pyramid, to build the Puma Puka, to build the structures that we see on the earth, somebody walked awful close to it, if not in this process. But I'm saying that we haven't for hundreds of thousands of years walked in the full realization of who we are. But if we're beginning to wake up and start to think about it, and I begin to see it, I have the potential to be this. Whew.
Amen.
He says, man is become as one of us. Look at Genesis chapter 3 and verse 22. And well, we have had this one. And the Lord God said, behold, the man is become as one of us. Now, you tell me what's wrong with that. And you know what everybody says? Oh, now he's going to live forever. Yes, you are. You cannot not live forever. You'll change the body just like you change your clothes. Just like you buy a different car, because you'll wear the body out. But you are designed and you are built to be a forever creature. Your soul and your spirit are forever, and your soul is connected to the physical things you experience in this life. And when we can re-own and come back to understand what karma is, karma are the pains that you experience in life. which is another word for the Greek word harmatia and the Hebrew word chata'at. Actually, it's translated for sin, but it's actually the word pain, because every one of us experience pain walking through this dimension. And much of it comes from our parents and the ones that love us and the ones that care for us and the ones we care for. We sometimes initiate pain on people, and people carry pain so deep that pain can cause you to have all kinds of sickness and ailments and all kinds of dysfunctions in your body. And we function out of the pain instead of out of the pleasure or out of the freedom that we are designed to be.
Wow.
Now, to own that and to begin to, then we will quit throwing stones at people doing stupid things, because it's the pain driving them to do the things that they do. And many times we as parents have initiated that pain in ignorance.
Yes.
I would give anything to go back and re-raise my 3 girls, but I can't. And I'm not supposed to, because it is what it is. And, many of it is given to them and to me as an experience. And that experience is me to learn from it. That's what the Nachash is. I need to learn from it, because it is a teacher. And I need the teacher as long as I'm in school. Amen?
Amen.
But there'll come a time.
Amen.
Well, I don't need that teacher. Hallelujah. I'm working on that. I want to get there. I tell you, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I mean, the more I begin to, and that's why I can't get out of Genesis 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Because it keeps showing me. It keeps unveiling me to me. I begin to see the deeper part of who I am. You know what I'm saying? It just, whew. The man has become as one of us. The Rabbi Yeshua.
So negative, Lynn.
I'm sorry?
When it's written in Genesis, it sounds so negative.
I know. When you read it from the English translation, it sounds that way. But when you start to see it from the Hebrew, and then you start to realize a lot of this is just filler. It has no business being there, but it's there to kind of tell a story. And when I accepted it that way, I thought, okay, I'm going to extract the jewels that's here, because I'm going to be just exactly, it tells you in the book of Proverbs, if you want to find the truth, it's like digging for gold. It ain't easy. Everybody looking for easy. You can't even imagine how many hours, weeks, days, months I poured over this stuff to try to figure this out, to see, what does that say? What does that mean? And just stay there and stay there and stay there and stay there. Boom, until 5,000. Oh, God, I see that. But that's an epiphany. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
That's a phenomenal moment. And that moment is freeing. It frees you from the condemnation. It frees you from that judgmental thing that we get from Christianity, Wow. So the Rabbi Yeshua, better known as the story of Jesus, is supposed to have quoted this assertion, but of course, he who referred to himself as Ben Adam, which is actually mistranslated as Son of Man, knew the meaning of the letter number code. Not even the disciples understood this sacred language, as they themselves said. Do you remember this? Master, we don't understand what you're saying. Can you explain that? Well, yeah, come in the house and I'll tell you. Well, coming into the house is initiation. It's where you come into a place. I surrender my golden calves. I'm going to surrender and open myself up to allow you to show me and teach me. Now that's different. That comes to a different place. So, let me read you one other thing here from Alvin Boyd Kuhn in this cipher of Genesis. And it says, the misunderstandings with which we have grown up are too numerous to be dealt with in this small volume. Here, however, is another vital example. We have seen with the episode of Jacob wrestling with God, or with Elohim, that the process of evolution in time is satisfied only when overcome and conquered. Thus, Esha, in plucking the so-called apple, understands and integrates the Elohimic process, and it is satisfied. An extraordinary thing then happens to Esha. When she is questioned concerning this event, she does not, as the translation asserts, reply. She doesn't say this, but this is what the translation asserts that she says. That's verse 14. So if you want to look at verse 14, chapter 3, verse 14 with me, let's read it real quick. It says, "And the Lord God said unto the serpent, Because you have done this, you are cursed above all the cattle and above all," let's see, that's not it. Verse 13. Verse 13, here we go. Verse 13, I'm sorry. Verse 13 says, "And the Lord said unto the woman," the Lord said to Esha, "What is this that you did? What have you done? What have you done?" And the woman said, "The serpent beguiled me, and I did eat." Now I'm going to read it to you from the Hebrew. Here's what the Hebrew says. It says, when she is questioned concerning this event, she does not, as the translation asserts, reply. The serpent beguiled me. What the true reading in Hebrew in the ancient code says and gives is far more significant. The Hebrew phrase ha-nachesh, ha-shayini, as is often true, is the most beautiful passage and is impossible to translate in just 2 or 3 words. It has to do with the action of the sheen. Now I want you to follow me real closely right here. The action of the sheen, that's the sheen, and it's considered, generally in all cases, it's considered the breath. It's always considered the breath. And you remember when I drew the pyramid where I was born, and the first thing I did when I was born, you remember the first thing that happened to you when you were born? Exactly. You took a breath. If you didn't take a breath, you ain't here. You're going to go back and start over and do it again. And when my dad planted the seed up here in green, it began the building of this tabernacle, and it took it 9 months. But then when I was exited from it, I took the breath. We just don't know what that breath did. We think, well, it expanded my lungs. Think again. Think again. That's what this is saying right here. This is what he gets into right here. And this is what I want you to see. I'll just kind of quit on this, but I want you to see this because this is significant. And that's exactly why. If you don't have this book right here, I highly, highly recommend that you get it. Strong and Fearless by Dr. Phil Nuremberger. And it's about your breath.
And much more. And much more.
Oh, and yeah, and much, much more. Much, much more. But he'll give you a better understanding of your breath and how, in different ways, of your breath. Because if you're breathing right, you're going to live a long time. That's right. This is good, y'all. Just hold your seat, buckle your seatbelt, and put your life jacket on. We're in deep water. It says, the Hebrew phrase ha-nachesh, ha-shayini, as is so often true, is the most beautiful passage, and it is impossible to translate it just in 2 or 3 words or a few sentences or paragraphs. It has to do with the action of the letter Shin. The 300, the letter Shin. which we met with after Adam's so-called deep sleep. You see, after Adam was put in a deep sleep, then God called the woman you hear that? Sheen. Shah. When you add an H to it, you give it feminine energy, productive, co-creative energy. That's the ha. Why do you think God changed Abram and Sarai's name? Why did he put an H on the end of it? Because he said, because this is your Abram and Sarah. This is your Abram and Sarah. Your upper brain. Your Sarah Brum. Sarah Abram. See, I mean, that's your upper brain. And what does your upper brain need? Think with me. Oxygen. Air. Breath. Has that baby experienced that yet? No. This is a beautiful picture, and it's culminating in the fact that the tabernacle is built. The intricate parts of the tabernacle is put together. The brain and all of its functions and all of the psychological, neurological nerves, the wiring system is put together in it, and now it's ready for this. That's the Hashayini. It's ready to be breathed. And the only time it can be breathed is when it exits the womb. And God engulfs it. It has the action of the letter Shin, which we met with after Adam's so-called deep sleep. The Shin. It is remembered, stands for the cosmic breath of life. And we have seen that the true meaning is not that they were naked and not ashamed, which has nothing to do with the letter numbers of the text, but that they were left without the sheen. You see, the baby's built in the womb and he hadn't breathed. It hasn't been sheened. It has to be sheened, and they translated it that the serpent beguiled you. The serpent is the neurological system. It's that nervous system that causes all of the organs to function, to pulse, to experience alif, to experience the life, the death, positive, negative. That's what it says here. And they translated it beguiled instead of hashimi. It hasn't been breathed yet. The baby's built. The baby's ready. The baby is ensouled. The soul is within it. And the Spirit is the architect with the soul to have built it. But it hadn't breathed yet.
Wow.
But they are left without the sheen. Now, Hashayini means simply that Nachesh, the serpent, sheens her. In other words, the serpent now, as it's delivered, the neurological, the serpent, this serpent now, as it leaves her, breathes. It breathes the instrument. Which I come back to this third character, then that God said we're going to build the tabernacle. Urah. Remember, and his name is associated with life. Do you know what his name means? His name means the hollow place of the serpent. So now when you go back over and you read in Exodus 31, these characters that God said, these are the ones that's skilled to build this thing. You realize that it's God itself building you, living you, laughing you, being you, being through you and being in you. So the Hashayini simply means that Nachesh, the serpent, sheens her. That is, he blends his earthly fire with her lost heavenly fire which thus comes to life again. It's what is called there in that same chapter as curse. And the word curse is this word, light, or, spelt twice. Or is the word for light. And it actually means the light from without and the light from within have now entered into the tension or to the struggle. That's why they call it curse. They've entered into that tension of creating the opposites. To create the push and the pull. To create everything that you do. The pulsation, the inhale, the exhale. And that's exactly how it lines up right there in the end of that chapter. And it's translated with words that we can associate ourselves with, either because they've lost their meanings or because of the mistranslations and they didn't want us to know what it said. And it's all about the miracle of you and the miracle of your ability to breathe, to live, to move, and to have your being as the instrument that you are built to be, and that is God. Selah. Amen.
Who's